Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you're joining us today, and welcome to this webinar on AI adoption, what APAC leaders need to know, keep their software supply chain safe. We are joined today by JFrog Senior Director of R&D, Prasanna Raghavendra. Welcome, Prasanna, and thank you for taking the time to join us today. Before I introduce Prasanna and let him take the floor, the webinar today is a joint effort with JFrog and CIO.com, where we surveyed over 300 executives globally, and the data that it revealed was intriguing. What we found out was that 23% of organizations faced security breaches, and yet only 30% considered it as a top priority. What was staggering was that 241% increase in software supply chain breaches. But to tell us more about that and how we protect the software supply chain today, I'll pass it on to Prasanna. Prasanna?
Thanks, Jay. First of all, it's always exciting, to be talking to an August forum of this kind. And thank you for joining this session. Like Jay said, the two interesting thing, we as JFrog, we have quite a few customers, counting more than 7,000. And it's always good to learn from them. And here is another model where we are partnering with CIO Online and reaching out to these individuals to get their perspective of how they're seeing software supply chain from security angle and from AI angle, right? I think that's really the content of our survey. And what is also interesting is we have kind of done a both bottom-up and top-down survey. We met with 300 plus VP and C-level executives to get a top-down view of how they are seeing their companies managing and addressing security challenges. And also the guys who are actually getting their hands dirty, be it functional code, test code, infrastructure code. So these are the individual contributors who are providing this feedback. So it is very distilled, like Jay mentioned, some of the nuggets that we are seeing and astounded by. We wanted to share that, and not only share, we also wanted to reflect on that, provide some interesting observations that we've had, both individually as Prasanna and also as JFrog. And we wanted to put that together in this next 30 minutes and take you guys forward on that, right? So with that, let me bring in the first learning we had. Jay already put that number. It's 2.5 times, really astounding. From 2022 to 2023, the increase in number of software supply chain breaches is 2.5 times, right? It's really mammoth. But one thing I must say, it's not unexpected, right? Because we are seeing this as a trend, for the last 2-3 years, right? And you should have expected. And if you've not expected, I think it's a good learning for you in this session as well, right? If you take a look, step back and see why this is increasing, right? What we believe is the amount of companies who are depending on third-party dependencies is increasing. And the third-party dependencies on open source is increasing even more, right? Because it's for a good reason. Open source are now becoming more mature. They're more stronger, safer. But at the same time, it is also a little bit riskier. So if you don't adopt it in the right model, you will see more and more supply chain attacks, right? And why, if you look at it from hacker perspective, they find this a very compelling reason to do a high spread attack on dependencies that are very popular, right? If I actually infect a very highly used third-party open source binary, I can attack, hundreds and thousands of consumers of that software, right? So that makes it, very large surface level attack. It also is low effort because it's an open source tool. It's a very small tool, but a very popular tool. So you can actually attack with minimal effort. And again, extending the same thing, low technical skill, but they can actually abuse the trust relationship, and that's what does that's what security issues does to us. So in that context, we believe this is something that you should expect, you should plan to handle it, and the number for 2024 is going to go up, right? There is no doubt in that. And we need to see how, as a community, we can actually start addressing that now. The second interesting learning we've had is more around how companies are addressing this issue. Right on the left side, which is basically the left side of scanning code and binary, we see that only 41% and only 66% of the companies we met with said they are actually adopting it. While we talk a lot about shift left, it doesn't look like not many are shifting left. Right on the right side, what you see is detecting packages in post development, during build, during release time. Right, so that's one interesting thing. While there is a lot of discussion about shifting left, it doesn't look like companies we have spoken to have shifted left that far. Right, so that's one interesting thing. The other very big revealing thing here is executives feel more complacent with the change that is happening in the industry. The 66% felt, hey, we are doing enough security scan. 92% of the executives feel that they have solution to detect malicious open source packages. Right, so this big wall between the feeling, here it is really the feeling between developers and executives is astounding, and that's an interesting picture that we caught. And there has to be something that need to be done around this, right? So that's a point that we wanted to make with that learning, and we will talk about how to address that. And what I wanted to really also talk about is, this is a survey in 2021, 3 years back, and the same output, right? For the past 3 years, we've not really learned much. The cognitive dissonance of the executives around security continues, which is not really something we should be proud of as a community, right? 93% of the executives felt they're equipped, they're prepared, they're ready to roll on, but 64% of them do not know what to do when an attack occurs. Right, so this continues, and the same numbers at the bottom on a survey that we did 3 months back. So for the last 3 years, the kind of directional view of executives are not really changed much. Right now there is a big increase in security breaches, but how are the companies, managing it, and how are they thinking about doing this, right? So there is one reactive layer where the companies are trying to address the issue as and when it happens. Maybe they take a week, take a day, take a month, but at least they're trying to address that. But none of them are taking a proactive approach. No, not none, but 30% of them are not taking a proactive, 70% of them are not taking a proactive approach to take this as a supply chain security gap and push that as an initiative this year, right? I think this kind of addresses the gap with the management or, the executive viewpoint that we saw. They're still not seeing this as a big issue that need to be addressed as a top initiative this year, not next year, this year, right? I think that's a big feedback that we are hearing from our customers. Right? To this, I must say, as an industry, we've woken up. Right? In 2021, when the US government started building a regulatory framework for handling supply chain attacks. I think that was an eye-opener for all the large companies, from Google to everyone. Everyone had a sense of it. I'm not saying it came like, everyone was blindsided by this, but the regulatory body, the push that was needed, and all these large companies coming together to address this was an important milestone, as we start looking at software supply chain, right? So it is now a board agenda in some of the large companies who are really close to these regulations. As you can see, the US government did in 2021. The executive order came 14028. That's, kind of rolled down into multiple regulatory compliance requirements from various verticals. Same time, we saw European Union picking it up. They pulled in multiple compliance requirements, and APAC is not far away as well. We have Australia, Singapore, South Korea, everyone coming with their specific security requirements to ensure software supply chain is also a part of the larger compliance requirements that is being mandated. So given this whole visibility that has come, it is important that some, those 70% who are not even looking at this as a important aspect for them to consider for now, for this year, for the upcoming year, I think you're going to be a laggard. No, it has to be addressed right away and right now. And the other thing that we asked, we spoke about AI ML, and this is really the elephant in the room. Are you looking at AI ML as a solution for your developers while they create code? Is a question. Look at this number. APAC is leading the pack, and they're really, really comfortable in their developers using, AI tools for them to develop software, right? Another question that we had was, are they using ML as a security scanning and remediation tool? APAC is not far behind, while Americas leads the pack. But the key thing is, none of them are saying, hey, we are still evaluating. AI ML is here and now for customers, developers, essentially, to use it, and for the DevSecOps ecosystem to leverage it, right? And that's happening. And it's not only in the DevSecOps ecosystem. AML is being adopted across board in the industry, right? That's happening. And these numbers, while it is specific to DevOps and DevSecOps, we see this adoption happening across industry. Right now, when you take a step back, and if this is happening, what should you do about it? Right? What we have realized, with various kinds of incidents that we are seeing in ML and AI based usage of software, the key thing one should know is ML or AI and the models that come out of it is actually binary managed holistically within other binaries, right? You can do multiple things like, be runtime dependency, runtime container, training data. The real model itself can embed a binary within. And this is important for us to know, because typically models are seen as data. Hey, how can data hurt me? And data can hurt you if you don't handle it properly. And I think that's a realization that we need to take home, so that while you open up for your developers to use AI, for your verticals to use AI, you need to do that with caution and with some semblance of an implementation where you are, kind of managing your risks of how much secure, unsecure software can go into the, hands of your customer. Right. So these were main points that we wanted to say. I want to take a step back and see how we should look at this in the perspective of what you can do about it. right? If you take any of your teams, your companies where you're coming from, I'm sure you have all the right people. You have developers cracking code, QA team testing them, design team making sure it's designed well. You have DevSecOps, DevOps, SecOps, DevSecOps, all these roles that are embedded within your organization to do all the right things, right? You also have on the right side the right tools, the right programming languages, packages, and ecosystem. So when you have all of this together, why is that we are still struggling here, right? And the way we look at it is, it's basically a platform approach that you need to take, right? And that's predominantly what we bring to the table. And the reason platform becomes important is you need to handle every new thing that is coming into the table in different colors, in different angles. Example, ML is coming today. We had Go, we had Rust, we had Java. Each of these packages were coming with different kinds of issues. We have NPM, which is most vulnerable packages that are sitting in the system today, right? How do you address all of them in the same way so that developers are not getting confused, right? To do that, you need to have a holistic platform which can take you any of these things in a well orchestrated fashion so that you can actually secure your binaries as it hits your production, right? On the top, you see curation, which is basically the way we look at it is shifting left of left. Take any binary that comes, including ML models here, into the system and make sure what your internal developers use is completely curated. It will not have any of these malicious packages that are sitting, right, for them to do. It acts like a binary firewall for you, right? And then, as you move along, you can adopt various security techniques coming through JFrog Security Essentials, be it context-based security, based, secrets analysis, and various part. I don't want to delve more into it, but the idea really is to ensure you have a platform approach to address software supply chain attacks in a holistic fashion, right? And there is this whole discussion around AI/ML, and is AI/ML also a DevSecOps? We believe it is, but it is with a small difference where we need to talk about AI developers, the data scientists, like how they deploy models, which is binary, like I said. So recently we acquired Quark, which was a powerful player in MLOps as to how you can actually move module-based implementations and build systems and serve these models. But what we saw is a very nice marriage of that working with the platform that I just mentioned to move all these ML-based artifacts into Artifactory or the platform and take it through the life cycle of a model development, right? So with these two, we believe we can address software supply chain as software supply chain security as a risk for any large companies, and bring a very strong software supply chain system in place for our customers. So the key takeaway from my perspective is, taking the platform view and model, you should consider and you will reduce cognitive load, be it contextual feedback, contextual runtime data that comes from Quark that I've mentioned, improve cycle times, focus on what binary I'll select, do a very focused approach on which of my dependency is going to be, both in curation and even before curation. Like when you actually select a open source tool, you should make sure you are selecting the right kind of dependencies, right kind of teams that are building these dependencies, the right kind of culture they have, in fixing these security issues. Code highlighting, we've seen about that for quite some time now, thanks to these powerful IDEs, building, packaging, bundling, all across the cycle, the software supply chain cycle, right? Also look at integrating company intelligence. This is super important. You need to have the teams, in fact, we have a research team which is looking at security all the time. One is from a ecosystem perspective, from an industry perspective, looking at Docker Hub. We have found multiple vulnerabilities there, NPM, multiple CVs identified by JFrog. But also internally, you need to have a team which can look at how you're using the software and is that in the right direction, and so that you can build the right policy and process and build the right set of guidelines such that you use the right dependencies as well. Encourage AML adoption. We see that there is a lot of interest in companies using it, but you need to use it, with a lot of implementation of processes such that you don't get hurt more than it helping you, right? And lastly, but not least, you need to think holistically. Security is not about doing one thing right and 9 things wrong. It is about doing everything in the right pace and making sure you have all your perimeters addressed and closed in the right form, right? So these are the 5 things that I would like you to take home. With that, I'm going to pause my talk. Any questions? Happy to take.
Thank you, Prasanna. Those findings are really astonishing to see and hear. And it is puzzling as well to see that not a lot of organizations are, up there ready tackling those gaps. That being said, we did certainly receive a few questions, and I think to your point of trying to shift left, not a lot of companies have been adopting the shift left strategy. Well, one of our attendees here asked the question, and I think this is something that we're seeing as well, is how do we ensure that executives and developers are on the same page? Because we all are aware that developers and folks on the security side, they don't really go hand in hand. So sitting from where you are and your point of view, what are some of the strategies that you suggest?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jay. What we need to do is we need to bring more visibility, right? Visibility in terms of how these software security incidents are managed, how many there are coming, and how much of investment developers are doing to both reactively and proactively supporting, right? And that will give you one angle of what's going on in the software software development process, right? So that's one. The second thing is the visibility in terms of how it can hurt business, right? If you release a software and if the consumer of the software, the customer, is taking longer because he found vulnerabilities, saying he's not going to deploy this version because I found a vulnerability. And if that cycle time becomes longer, it's going to hurt the business cycle time. And that's going to, delay your, incoming revenue, right? So in that context, it's going to hurt both the left side, which is how quickly you're creating software, and also the right side, which how quickly the software is getting adopted, right? So from that perspective, it is important there is good visibility for businesses to understand. In fact, in our in JFrog, this is like seen by the EVP as to how quickly we are actually attacking software security incidents. So keep the visibility high, and I think that will help even the executives to understand the challenges developers are facing, so that this numbers start looking alike at some point in time.
Fair point there, Prasanna. And I know you're on the front lines as well, managing a team that's trying to build that visibility and traceability for the organization. But that being said, no one's really creating new code today. And open source just so happens to be, the key point of origin for almost every organization today, right? And that being said, our next question that we have over here, essentially, the attendee asks us, what can organizations do today to mitigate the risks associated with open source? And how do we sort of help them? I think I'm sort of adding on a little bit more here, help them enable that visibility and traceability, like you mentioned.
So I kind of alluding to that when I was speaking. Open source is a double-edged sword. It is really, really useful. Community driven, so it has taken a lot of use cases. So it will be really useful functionally. But the issue is there are plethora of open source tools. So when you go and pick a open source tool for your consumption, you need to do a very good due diligence, right? Some of the things we have, in fact, from JFrog, we have written some tools to actually look and run these tools to understand how you can rate these open source tool from supply chain perspective, right? So that's one. The second thing is you should also look at the way the team behind this open source are looking at security as an aspect, right? One is how accurate they are in terms of not having any vulnerability, right? You can run scan and find it, but it is also about the culture, right? If you find a vulnerability, how quickly they're facing, how quickly they're fixing it, because becomes important because you become they become an important factor in your delivery cycle, right? If you have to fix it, are they going to fix it as quickly so that you can deliver and meet your SLA to your customers, right? So there is a supply SLA chaining that will happen. And because they're open source, they may not have SLA, but culturally, you should figure out if they have a good SLA or SLA assembling reactions that comes from them, right? So I think those are the little things that you should look, but you need to make sure you pick the right tool that will help. If you have influence on those teams, that is even better.
Thank you, Prasanna. I appreciate your response over there. Speaking of, picking up the right tools, everyone's picking up on AI and ML today. And one of the things that we're seeing as well is the role of the data scientist becoming very significant in organizations. They're writing and deploying models in production. In your opinion, what is an effective and secure way to integrate these AI ML models into the SDLC? Because essentially, they are bringing it from the open source, using AI to sort of get the job done quickly, but it still leaves them exposed to vulnerabilities and threats.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the good news is we have solved this problem through the DevOps process, right? So there is a effective way of building software. Now, if you take the same set of principles and apply it on models, it actually aligns to the T, right? I think that's the first thing realization we should have, and make sure you don't reinvent the wheel and bring continuous integration, call it continuous testing, training, but it is the same, right? So the first thing is that now you need to look at how can I use or extend the existing tools that I have to kind of implement the same process. And that's where JFrog comes in, right? What we did is, I think actually probably 1 year back, we started supporting models as a repository, as a binary repository, right? So that was the first thing. And whatever we have learned from the thing of remoting a repository, creating a virtual repository, all of that comes out of box instead of you starting from scratch, right? So you can be dependent on third-party models. You can create your own models, which is dependent on third-party models. All of that comes. So that's one thing that you should look at it. The second thing is, as data scientists who come in, they will need a way of scanning these models such that they can provide these models to their customers in a clean fashion, right? And that is something that these tools that produce, including JFrog platform, where you can scan these, open these models, understand these models, and then try to find vulnerabilities within. One important thing, though, is what was missing, and which is what JFrog found as a gap, is how do I create a schema for these models so that we can scan it in the right way, right? Because you need to create a structure to understand what is composed in this package, right? And we created a new package called FrogML, which is essentially for a model where you can understand how this package, a model as a package, is built, so that when a software looks at it, it can open the package, understand what is there, so that it helps in scanning, right? So these kind of small innovation that we have done exactly to address the problem that you mentioned there.
Thank you, Prasanna. I know we're just getting started as a company as well on the road to AI adoption. And I know we're learning a lot along the way. But thank you so much for giving us your perspective. I know the future of AI is, we're just barely scratching the surface over there. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. We definitely did receive a few more questions, and we will reach out to you over email. But hey, guys, if you want to connect with Prasanna and learn more about what JFrog's doing today, and especially the recent survey with CIO.com, please feel free to scan the barcodes that you see on your screen right now. But otherwise, with that, I'm going to say thank you so much for taking the time today to join us, learn a little bit more about JFrog, learn a little bit more about how you can securely adopt AI, and obviously secure your software supply chain. With that, I'm going to say thank you, Prasanna. It's a pleasure having you join us today and share your opinions and shed some light on the study as well. Thank you once again, and we will see you at a future event.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you.
Thanks.